Good afternoon, everybody. It's John Thomas Hill. Welcome to the Rutherford Sports Network podcast, our continuing series called Changing the Game. And this is where we talk about Major League Baseball and what I change about the game. There's been a lot of discussion about rule changes to help speed up the game, pitch clocks, keeping batters in the batter's box, and all of that. I tend to like those rules to a certain degree. There is one rule I think we could possibly see. I don't think it'll ever be adapted, but I'd like to see a rule where if you foul the ball off 4 times, you have to foul it off 4 times. Not, let's say if you have 2 strikes on you and you foul the ball off 4 straight times, you strike out. I don't think that rule would ever actually pass muster. I've actually advocated it since I was a kid because back when we were playing baseball in my backyard, that was kind of the rule I had for my backyard, which is you foul the ball off 4 times after the second strike. Then you were out because it kept us from having to go constantly get the ball all the time. And I've always thought that rule would help speed up the game a little bit. I doubt very seriously that would ever come past muster, so I'm just putting it out there. It's a bit of a historical thing. Now, the pitch clock, I do like. I think that you got to be careful with it, though, especially pre and postseason, because you're going to have a lot of strategy and such. I think if you're going to have a pitch clock, then you need to have a clock where the batter is forced to stay in the batter's box to speed up the game. Like you can only get out of the box maybe twice in at bat, and if you get out of the batter's box a 3rd time, it's a strike, and you could potentially strike out. So, yeah, I think that putting that rule into effect would help speed up the game, but I doubt very seriously that a lot of this will ever really pass muster because the game, baseball is a lot about strategy. And the fact we're about to get universal DH, I should say, I really think that's coming down the line. And I think that the Players Association will not want to compromise a whole lot of rules just so they can get the DH. Because to me, as much as I like the idea of pitchers hitting, I think we need to have kind of a discussion about whether or not to actually have the DH rule, because pretty much every other level of baseball that I know of has a DH, except for the National League. High schools have it. I think every high school association, if I'm wrong about that, please let me know in the comments section if you're watching this on YouTube. Or you could go to the John Thomas Hill Show Facebook page and just leave a comment there. I really think that the DH rule should be either universal, either we have it or not, and I think it should be something that should be done. I'm one of those people. I understand why people object to it, but at the same time, we've had it for so long. Kids are coming up through high school and college and whatnot. They're used to playing with it. I don't think it's going to be a gigantic landscape change for the National League to finally adopt the DH rule, because it'll just simply adapt. People will adapt with the times and such. And here's the thing: in the DH rule, it doesn't mean the DH has to bat for the pitcher. Sometimes they pitch, because if you know about high school and American Legion baseball, sometimes the DH bats for the weakest batter, and that's not always the pitcher. Little thing there. Okay. let's talk about game length some more. In my honest, humble opinion, I think the best thing you could do to shorten baseball games is very simple. No more 8th and 9th inning in regulation. Just make it a 7-inning game. The reason I say that is I'm used to it in high school baseball. They play 7 innings. I think if you were to do that, you could shorten the games by a lot. You'd have more complete games. You would save bullpens more. To me, there's a lot of possibilities by shortening the game by a couple innings. Do I think that'll ever happen? No. Baseball's a traditionalist sport, and it's very hard for tradition to change in baseball. And I think that would be the easiest way to do it without the most disruption to the game. Now, the rules changes that have been proposed to deal with extra inning games. Like after 9 innings, you put a runner on first, and say after the 12th or 13th inning, you put a runner on first and second, or just put a runner on second, and after some another like 15th inning, you put runners on first and second. I don't like those rules because it really unless it goes past like the 12th or 13th inning or 14th. I would be hesitant to make that kind of landscape change unless the game is going way too deep. And there are two things you could do. You could either have it to where you have a runner on first or second to start after the 14th inning. Or after the 14th inning, everybody's eligible to come back on the field. So that if you can bring your top batters, if you've substituted them back out there. That, I think, could be doable. Now, I don't think this is going to take place because, like I said before, Major League Baseball is such a traditional sport. Baseball in general is such a traditional sport that change is very hard. But sometimes it's necessary. If you want to get the youth back into the sport, I think cutting it down to 7 innings, making it more TV friendly, with the pitch clock and keeping batters in the batter's box and finding ways to speed up the game a little bit but still keep the essence of the game the same, then I think you can win back a lot of those fans who kind of, because let's face it, the last 20 years or so, maybe 25 years, something like that, World Series games have started at 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast. Those games usually last until midnight, sometimes beyond that. Now, if World Series is in October, kids are in school, do you think any parents are going to let their kids stay up past 11 and watch World Series game? Not many. I think that and we understand why they do it, because they do it for the West Coast to kind of help the West Coast. Because 8:30 out here in the East Coast is 5:30 on the West Coast. But the thing is, we have to have a happy medium, and I think starting the games at 7:30, World Series games at 7 or 7:30, and the NLCS and ALCS games at 7 and 7:30 would do a lot of good. Because people on the West Coast are going to be rushing home to get to the TV sets and all that. That's why they made radio, folks. Okay. And most of America lives east of the Mississippi. I hate to throw some shade to the West Coast, but that's just simply the truth. And the fact is that if you want to get youth still involved in baseball, you have to have it to where they can watch the end of the game, and not just have to get up the next morning going, okay, who won the game last night? I'm not one of these people that has to, demand the entire World Series be played during the day. But I would say this: on the weekends, especially on Sunday, yes, you're going up against the NFL. But if you were to make an arrangement with the NFL, no 4 o'clock games on the days that the World Series is played on a Sunday. And you could play that World Series game in between the 1 o'clock games and the prime time game on the NFL. And that 4 to 8 o'clock section right there, or 4 to 8:30 section right there is yours. You could play the World Series like game 2 or whatever game it is now, because they've changed it up. I think it's like game 4 maybe. Because it used to be Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday for a 7-game series. Now it's changed, and I don't know why they did it, but that's just me. I do think that we are going to see a lot of changes in the near future in the game of baseball. Expansion is one of those things. And I think that you are going to see the game. I do think the game's going to change with expansion. You're going to have more players. You're going to have a dip in talent for a bit, but that will catch up in, say, 3 to 4 or 5 years. It's happened the last 2 times we've expanded, and I think it'll happen this time. There's simply a lot of markets out there that really could do well with Major League Baseball. Charlotte, for example, Montreal again, Portland. There's no guarantee Tampa Bay is going to get rid of the Rays. And there's always a chance that Miami could finally embrace the Marlins with the right ownership, the right, all of that. That being said, I think the time has come for us to look at expansion in a realistic perspective, because right now there's 30 Major League Baseball teams. And the game, while it's struggled at times, there is still time to not just save it, but also continue to continue its growth. And there are markets out there that would love baseball. Charlotte, if you know anything about the Carolinas, loves its baseball. High school baseball, hugely popular. College baseball, quite popular itself. Minor league baseball is very popular. So you could put a American League team in Charlotte. You'd have the interleague rivalry with Atlanta. If you put that team in the AL East, which I've said many times before, the best place for Tampa Bay to wind up if the Rays do move if they do move away from Tampa, would be Charlotte, because that would be, you'd have Boston and New York Yankees there every year, at least twice a year, I think. Baltimore, which would be a rivalry as well. You'd have built-in rivalries with Atlanta and Washington, and as well as the Marlins. Nashville's another possibility. They've done well with the Titans and as well as the Predators, shockingly enough. There is a lot of expansion possibilities out there that are realistic. You don't want to just have a ton of teams out there, but I could see, if you put a team back in Montreal and put a stadium that's worthy of the team, not just this monstrosity that is the Olympic Stadium up there, but a real good retractable roof dome where they could play some outdoor baseball as well as indoor baseball. You could definitely see that. Vancouver is a possibility, although I don't know how much they're into baseball up that way. But considering that the Mariners do get a good crowds in from Canada, that could be a very good rivalry right there. That with Portland as well. You know, there's always San Antonio. You know, Texas loves its baseball as much as it loves its football. And while the Alamodome would not be a great place to have baseball, it'd be at least a good stadium to have it to where you could build a baseball-only facility in a place like San Antonio. There are other possibilities, of course. Who's to say you couldn't put a second team in Dallas? I mean, you've got there is the market's big enough. Houston's another possibility. I doubt that'll happen though. But you know, it's going to be interesting to see how baseball, because there is a movement within baseball to kind of revigorate the game amongst the young people, as well as the African American community. And there's kind of a worry that the game is losing its Anglo-American / African-American audience because there's a lot of Latin players coming in, and they want to kind of balance that out a little bit. But at the same time, you don't want to detract from that, because it's hugely popular in Cuba and Mexico and all through the Central American countries and Venezuela, even though Venezuela's government's, not want to get political here, but, we're not exactly buddy-buddy with Venezuela right now. But the game is growing. It's popular in Australia. They actually have their professional league's actually branched out to New Zealand now, and they've done pretty well there, so New Zealand's another possibility. Europe is slowly growing the game there. I was actually surprised that baseball is popular in the Czech Republic. It's actually gotten pretty big there, for all things considered. It's not soccer, it's not hockey, but it's like soccer here. It's become a pretty popular niche sport, and that can be possible throughout Europe. Basketball's really taken Europe by storm. It's, I think, like the third most popular sport, I believe, maybe even second now in Europe. American football has done well, especially in Germany. There is a movement to put a team in London. I think you could see the NFL Europe come back again one day. You could see, if they ever have flag football be an Olympic sport, I could see the United States not being as dominant as you think. And there are other markets like China, which they've embraced basketball. They're steadily getting better at baseball. I could see within the next 20 years China becoming pretty darn good in baseball, like South Korea, and Japan have. I could see if the Chinese government really wanted to devote the resources to baseball, and I think that's coming, especially considering that the Winter Olympics are going to be in Beijing, and soon enough they'll want to have them again back in China. Maybe not in Beijing, but somewhere else, maybe Shanghai, maybe one of the other cities, that they might devote to, because there's always geopolitical things in the Olympics. A lot of folks talk about, I don't want to pull up politics in my sports. Politics have been in sports for a very long time, especially when it comes to the Olympics. Why do you think there were boycotts in 80 and 84? And even some before that. I'll get to that one of these days. I'm going to try, one of these days I'm actually going to do some sports history stuff and talk about some things like that. But, growing the game globally is a very important thing for Major League Baseball, because there are cities that would do very well with Major League ball clubs eventually. I could see Birmingham, Alabama having one, and Memphis. Those two cities crop up every time there's talk about an expansion team in football. They're also hotbeds for baseball as well. I don't know about New Orleans. Louisiana is not a huge, gigantic baseball hotbed, unless there may be pockets along the state that are very popular. Maybe the one that bordering Texas and whatnot. So there are definitely possibilities. Oklahoma is another possibility. Nebraska with Omaha, they host a College World Series every year. There's a possibility there. I mean, if you can get, you don't have to have 70,000 people at a major league game all the time to do reasonably well. Usually 25 to 30,000 people a game is extraordinarily good in baseball. So you got to look at the business aspect of that. I could see baseball expanding quite rapidly if the game starts becoming popular with the youth again. And it's going to be hard because soccer's definitely becoming more and more popular in the United States. You've got other sports that could fill the void if baseball continues to drag itself down with trying to stay with tradition, its labor issues, and all that. I could see other sports kind of chip away at that during the summertime. Lacrosse is becoming more popular every year. I mean, it's become very popular in high schools. They're playing lacrosse in South Carolina now in the high schools and in colleges, and it's growing more and more each year. So once this virus thing is over with and revenues bounce back in the college, say before the end of the decade, I could see major conferences, major schools like Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia Tech, other schools like that, Tennessee, may very well get lacrosse programs started on the D1 level. It's definitely a possibility. So, there is all of that. Now, minor league baseball has taken a huge hit. I think it's a very irresponsible thing for Major League Baseball to do. But what they've done is basically cut the affiliations from 160 down to 120. I think, though, that they will see the error of their ways in due course. I do think that sometime before the end of this decade, they will change their mind. And if you will give me just a moment, I need to pause because I have a phone call.